So once again, I want to thank everyone for joining this ninth in a series of 10 lectures that have been organized by the Global University for Sustainability for the Center for Civil Diplomacy in Rojava and by Sumeria Co-operative Institute. The series is focusing on the experience of Rojava. The title of the series, sorry, let me just get this up again, is Rojava, Resistance, Resilience, and Renewal, Democratic Confederalism, and the Changing Face of Revolution. This is the ninth in a series of 10 lectures, and the final lecture, the 10th, will be in 2 weeks' time. So today's subject is the social economy and the cooperative system in North and East Syria. Our speaker is Chalang Omer, who is an academic in economy and a consultant in social economy. And he is joining us today from Kobani. And the respondent will be myself, John Rastakis. I am a sessional instructor on alternative economies for social change at the University of Victoria in British Columbia, Canada. I am also co-founder of Sumeria Co-operative Institute, and I have written fairly extensively on cooperativism and the social economy. So the way the lecture and the presentation will work is our guest speaker, Chalang, will speak on the subject for about an hour. And I will give a warning of 10 minutes before the end of the hour, just to let Chalang know that his time is approaching. And then I will follow with some responses and some remarks, perhaps some questions based on Chalang's presentation. And I will speak for no more than 15 or 20 minutes. And then we will open up the floor for comments, discussion, and questions from our participants. So I welcome everyone who's joined our session today. We have people from all around the world, as usual. And so without any further delay, let me welcome Chalang to begin his presentation, and also thank you and gratitude for the interpreters that will be simultaneously interpreting his remarks from Kurdish into English. So Chalang, whenever you're ready, please proceed.
Thank you, John. And I also would like to thank the organizer, Global University of Sustainability, the Center for Civil Diplomacy and Synergia for this opportunity, for this work, which is very meaningful, for organizing these seminars. And it's a great opportunity for us to be able to share our experience from Rojava with our friends all over the world. Today, I will talk about the social economy, about some historical background, some ideological characters, and also I will talk about the experience in Rojava, how it started, on what level we are today, and the development, and also the challenges that we had to face during this time. I will talk about these topics. I've prepared a presentation and I will share my screen with you. Yes, we will talk about social economy in Rojava. But before starting, I would like to underline something before we start our topic. Before we talk about the social economy in Rojava, to be able to understand it, we have to go back to the history, because it has deep roots in this region, in Mesopotamia, in Kurdistan, in the Zagros and Taurus crescent. It's where the first civilization and agricultural societies developed. They were benefiting from the natural resources like water and the fertility, fertile fields. They started agriculture, and thus it also led to village revolution. And then people started settling down and establishing villages. While benefiting from these fertile crescent, it not only developed the economy but also developed the societies, the human beings. The first agricultural societies in this region, it also developed the first separation of work. Everybody was dealing with something else, and it also brought the ideologies and the mythologies together with this development of agriculture and the society, agricultural societies. The husbandry and also agriculture were the two main pillars of the development of the human beings. After hunting and collecting the wild and the nature, people started to producing these needs, and their in their fields they plant and they produced their own food. And back then, agriculture used to be considered to be a sacred, because we start with the corns, and then it grows and it's green, it becomes green, and then at the end it gives you something to eat. So this process and the persons dealing with this process considered to be sacred. And throughout that process, the gods and goddesses came up, and then mostly the women were considered to be goddesses back then, and motherhood also played a very important role. For thousands of years, these belief and the role of the woman continued for for thousand years, because the women were looking after the animal and also dealing with the fields. So they were productive, and then this considered to be something sacred. And that it's not a coincidence that back then most of the gods and were goddesses. After the agriculture revolution that started in the Fertile Crescent in Kurdistan and Mesopotamia, the conditions, I mean, the natural conditions were very suitable. Circumstances were suitable. The soil was fertile, and also they had water resources. And like Upper Mesopotamia is a region, and the societies developed on the basis of being villages and farmers, and that also brought the culture of villages. And most of the villages, they organize themselves around goddesses. And 5,000 years after that, the civilization in Upper Mesopotamia that developed there, it started going down south, and then they Uruk culture of Sumerians started. So the civilization started in Upper Mesopotamia, went down, and also brought also some developments in agriculture in the south. In Oroks, they started irrigation, they organized societies, or depending on the work they do, and they started these water canals for irrigation. And then eventually we know that this civilization built ziggurats in of Sumerians. It also brought some changes in terms of production, but also brought some changes in terms of the society and the social structures. In Uruk city, in Mesopotamia, the culture of masculinity also developed after that. And husbandry and agriculture, after led the establishment of the villages, and that also led to clergy and some religions. It also affected the production relationships, and we can say the organizations established by the ziggurats in Sumerians also led the culture of cities, like urban culture, and the system in the village where the production relationships, where women used to be goddesses, changed in the cities after the establishment of the cities. And it started at the time of Sumerians. And so from the time of the goddesses, we went to a different period where the men were masculine, and then we see some gods here instead of goddesses, which used to be dominant in the village culture. After the female goddesses, they lost their power and they were forced to accept the dominance of the gods and the male. It's also created the first classes within the society. So it started also at the time that started in South Mesopotamia in the Sumerian country. It also went to up and then reached Kurdistan today, and this class system also became dominant in the north. In the in the Neolithic time, we see the dominance of the Sumerian metropoles. So we see the first occupations, first colonies by the Sumerians in Kurdistan. Their hegemony was there, and we see that. How was the social economy in Mesopotamia? That's how we can define it. Now, when we go through and come to our time, the hegemony of economy in Kurdistan, of course, goes back to those antique times. But when we see in the history of Kurdistan, which was hosting the economical revolution, water resources played a very important role because the human lives were depending on water resources. So Kurdistan, with its nature, it was a heaven for such economy. But in the 20th century, the colonialism in Kurdistan went to reach a different level. All these traditions in the region, which were based on a history of 5,000 years, it was also faced a destruction with it in the 20th century. Especially in Kurdistan, there was some politics against agriculture, which used to, in Kurdistan, where the soil and the region was considered to be sacred, faced different politics from the colonialists. And Kurdistan became the target of the hegemonic powers, the imperialists, and they wanted to bring Kurdistan under their control. At the end of the First World War, these powers, they wanted to change the map of the Middle East based on their interest. And this was a time that they found a different source of energy, which was petrol. And they wanted to have, they wanted to bring all these wells and the source of petrol and new energy, bring in their control. And that's why they wanted to occupy Kurdistan. And they also wanted to control the water sources as a strategy. And therefore, the rich water sources and the petrol sources of Kurdistan led it to be a target of these imperialists or the colonialist powers. After Ottoman Empire was divided with the among the other imperialist countries through um, different treaties like Sykes-Picot or Lausanne, Kurdistan was divided and the Kurdish people were deprived of their right to self-determination. And this division of Kurdistan was based on the interests of the imperialist countries, according to the sources. And Turks, Arabs, and Persians, the people living in the Middle East, they established their own countries, own states, but the Kurds were deprived of this right, and it was divided among the newly born nation states, which followed the motto of one state, one language, one culture. And eventually, Kurdish people were subject to very heavy assimilation politics by these newly established nation states. These countries also wanted to control the Tigris and Euphrates rivers and wanted to exploit the fertile economy, fertile agriculture of Kurdistan. And today we even see that these countries, Turkish state is building new dams on Tigris and Euphrates in order to control them. And for that, they also sacrificed the historical sites, for example, Hassan Cave, which was submerged by the water of the dam that built in its vicinity. And we see that they're in the name of the economy or bringing the economy in their control, they are also targeting the culture of the region, which goes back to 5,000 years. Öcalan defines this that the economical occupation is one of the most dangerous and barbaric approach to destroy a society, and people are being subjected by the nation states, these politics, and to accept their dominance, and that they're being controlled, and the people who used to be in charge of their own economy are now becoming slaves by the hands of those states. Those states that divided Kurdistan they are also establishing, they're also practicing their nationalistic policies on Kurdistan. It's not only culture or political domination, but it also brings economic the control of the region, and the people were deprived of their control about in terms of production. And this situation applies for all four parts of Kurdistan. And the people who used to be also in control of the trade and also different vocations. They were also being ripped of this ability, and even the agriculture now became a tool by the hands of nation states. Those who wanted to get in agriculture, they had to deny their own cultural identity in order to survive. So it was the choice given by the Turks or the Arabs or the Persians. If you want to survive, if you want to have your production and also your agriculture activities, you have to deny your own culture and become a Turk or Arab or Persian eventually. We have seen that is the for that's the way that they try to destroy the essence of the society, their own main characters that they target at. So in that case, there was two choice in the hands of the people. Either they will insist on their cultural identity of 10,000 years or and die, or they can deny their own identity and survive but become a Turk, Arab, or Persian. So why we need a social economy in Kurdistan and in the region? The democratic modernity, the way that Abdullah Öcalan defines it, so against the democratic modernity, Öcalan proposed a democratic modernity, and he says it can be an alternative, it can be a solution for the people, and it can be also effective not against the nation states only, but also religious domination, which are which are also being used, or which are the characters of the countries in the region. So social economy can create an alternative against nation states and theocratic states. According to this theory, ecology and also production, economical productions, they are not fighting against each other, but they are actually completing themselves. So production, economical production shouldn't lead detachment from the nature, and the human beings shouldn't be estranged to nature. They should complete each other, they should take care of each other, and for that we also need to go back to the traditional way of productions in the history, the way that people were respecting the nature. Something which is against the society, which is against the nature, will eventually be against the social economy. Therefore, we need the autonomy in economy in order to re-establish, recreate the social economy, which was destroyed by the nation states and the fundamentalism. We need a we need this way of establishing it based on a good relationship between human beings and the nature. And we should also deny the hegemony of the big powers. The, the economical the economy should be autonomous within itself, but it cannot be independent like the way that the nation states are imposing on us. Because once the economy becomes independent, then it will be the same way that the nation states are implementing, and then the states and everything will be at their service. We need autonomous economy, but not an independent one. An autonomous economy cannot turn into capitalism and nor the state capitalism. It is neither capitalism nor the state capitalism like in communist countries. This is not our principle. The main principle is ecology, to be ecological. It will be nature friendly, and this economy and economical production relationship should also bring democracy to the society. That's how we criticize the industrialism and the monopoly in the companies which are only aiming at benefit and interest and not any social support, or not changing or any interest of social interest. This cannot be our principles. So we call it social economy, but sometimes people call it people's economy, communal economy, or the joint economy. This is, doesn't matter what term you use, it's based on providing the society with their needs instead of making benefit. The main purpose of this economy is providing the societies with their needs and also respecting the nature. It's like making peace with the nature, a nature-friendly economy instead of benefit. The priority should be protecting the nature, because and in traditional capitalism, the main purpose is interest, benefit, and that is the benefit of some certain people. So the benefit of the society is providing them with their needs and also protecting the nature. Once you destroy the nature, you are also not doing a favor to the people. And it will eventually also protect the cities and the villages where people live. Because we see that the capitalism, it's not only producing and destroying the nature, but also with its waste, it also creates huge mountains of litter and the pollution in the cities, which also eventually pollute the soil and also waters. Mr. Öcalan, in terms of confederalist, the economical principle of the democratic confederalism, it will have a special political politics. So what kind of economy? How it will be managed, and also, for example, the usage of the natural sources, for example, building dams or benefiting from nature. These are the main questions. How we can actually receive tax, and how much, who will pay how much, how it will be decided. These are all the questions that we are dealing with. We cannot say that current capitalism will be destroyed completely. No, but social economy is try to weaken and its influence on the society, the capitalist system that we face today. And instead, we have to create a system of economy that serves the needs and the interests of the society. But it doesn't mean that we will not have any private initiatives. No, because we said we cannot destroy the current capitalist system altogether. So in this social economical system, we can also have the private initiatives, but what kind of role they play, and what kind of principles that they have to comply with are also some discussion topics. And the principles of the autonomous economy is also about the social justice. It should be an alternative based on social justice, and it will be it also gives opportunity access, fair access to nature and production. It should be just for women, for men, for children, and it will also bring sustainable development. And it will also bring some solution and bring some alternatives for the nature. For example, recycling or renewable energy and producing organic products. These are all will be also nature friendly, and it will also bring back the role of the woman, which they used to play in the history, and especially it will be very visible in the villages. And another principle is also going back to the traditional ways. For example, accessing new actors, especially women, because the women were deprived of deprived of the participation in the economy based on discrimination and also injustice between genders. Now the woman can also give opportunity to take part in the economy. Fourth principle is the benefit and also surplus should be deducted to the minimum level. It is not all about the uh, enlargement of the market or the trade or other things. The purpose is very simple: how you can get full, how you can full your stomach. The 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 target, the goal shouldn't be collecting surplus and making benefit. So it is about providing the needs of the people and also respecting the nature and not exploiting the natural sources. The fifth principle is it's the ownership system. It is also very critical, but also very complicated topic. Private ownership is not removed, but it has to be reorganized. Social economy says it is an absolute right. The ownership is the absolute right. Everybody has the right to use and enjoy their sources without destroying their nature and their surroundings. So the individual ownership is respected within this system. And now I will go to the chapter 4, and we will talk about the model of social economy in Rojava, how we actually implement it in reality, how much we managed and what kind of characteristics it has. The implementation of Rojava, now we also need to look at some history of Rojava and also some demography of the region. In since the foundation of Syrian state as a nation state, the Arabs were really rich in the region, and in the 60s they found petrol in the region, and since then the state changed its politics towards the region. And in 1963, after the Baathists came on power, they had very chauvinistic and nationalistic politics against the Kurds. They wanted to change the demography in order to deprive the Kurds from the natural sources. They had this Arabization policy. They the Ba'athist regime has been in power for 50 years. Kurdish regions, but not only Kurdish regions, but also north and northeast of Syria suffered these discriminatory politics. And the most obvious project of the Ba'athist regime was the Arab belts. You see, this is the Turkish border with Syria, and around like 5 kilometers, 20 kilometers, they confiscated all these fields in the region, and they resettled the Arabs brought from different parts of the country in order to kick out the Kurds from the region and to change the demography. Of course, the main purpose of this project was changing the demography. The same the same politics that Ba'athist regime implemented in Jazeera region for 50 years, we see this very same politics are being implemented in Afrin by the Arabs. Now we know that Arabs and the Turkomans are being resettled in Afrin, and the Kurds are being kicked out. Now Turkish state is implementing the same demography change in Afrin, because we see they are establishing cities and they are bringing the families of the fighters of the Islamist groups. So this is not only changing the demography, but also intervening with the economy of the region. For the years, the economy in the region never been allowed to thrive. They only wanted the agricultural production from these regions, and they will take them and to the center of the country and process them. And the petrol that they would take out in the region, they would also take it to the center of the country, which is Damascus and Aleppo, and process them. So they would never let the local products to be processed in the region. But after 2011, there was a movement within Syria, and within a couple of months, it turned into a civil war, and it became a religious war between the Alawite regime and the Sunni Muslims. But the Kurds, they didn't become a part of this conflict between the Sunni Arabs and the regime. The Kurds said they didn't follow this, they had their third page, and they started establishing their own autonomous regions, autonomous cantons in Jazeera, in Kobani and Afrin in 2014. And after cooperating with the Arabs and the Christians in the region, the other cantons were also established in the region. Manbij, Raqqa, south of Hasake, and Deir ez-Zor, after they were liberated liberated, there are also autonomous regions, autonomous administrations established. They are also pluralistic, and it also brought not only pluralist democracy or participation, social participation, but also brought a pluralistic economy. And the cantons which were established in 2014 at the beginning, now today we have 7 cantons in northern eastern Syria. It is bigger than 60,000 meters square, including Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa and all the other cities. And of course, we have some regions that under Turkish occupation, Greece, Serekaniye, these are also occupied by Turkey, and north of Aleppo was also occupied, They're also suffering the same way the people suffer in Afrin. The same politics are being implemented in the other occupied territories. So in the region where the regime used to implement their Arabization politics, now being implemented by the Turks and changing the demography of those regions. Regions under the autonomous administration, it's beyond Rojava, and the production they produce, it is around 55% of GDP of Syria. 90% of petrol, 35% of gas, and also they have very fertile fields. It was like wheat and corn. And one of the main reasons is that we also have water sources. We have different rivers, which are also essential for the agriculture. But in addition to Tigris and Euphrates, we have also smaller rivers in Afrani, in Kobani, in Grisipi, Belir, in Kamishlo, in Jakjak River. So all these cities that you see in the Rojava, they are all established around rivers and water sources, and it is also allows the people to become successful in agriculture, including husbandry. Almost 50% of the husbandry in Syria takes place in Rojava. The social contract of autonomous administration since 2014, it is also regulates the social economy. It's one of the principles in the social contract. It is the Article 43 of the social contract. It says the economy in the autonomous administration is based on general development, just and sustainable economy. It has to assure the human dignity and a dignified life of the people and social development, and monopoly is prohibited in the social contract. 2 days ago, there was a new piece of legislation passed by the there was a change amendment, and they said they are not only prohibiting monopoly but also supporting a just concurrence, the competition. But it did all these economical activities should respect the nature and also the society. This is the almost the constitution of the region, is the social contract. This system, it makes peace with sustainable development because it respects the society, the nature, and also try to minimize the effects of economy and the human beings on the nature, but all this the sustainability, the development should be sustainable. We said why we are focusing on this so much, despite the fact that this region is very rich with oil resources. So we know that it's not very sustainable. Maybe next a couple of decades we will be out of petrol in the region, and it also affects the nature very, very badly. So we are focusing on the agriculture, and it is very important for us to develop the agricultural activities and to make them sustainable. It will be our richness, the natural treasure in the area. Not we cannot be depending on petrol. Another the second principle underlined in the social contract is that it freedom of economy. It also respects and recognizes the individual's ownership and their interest. This is a different. This is a different. The difference is from communism and socialism. So it can be. This can be understood as a system between socialism and capitalism. That's how it has some good takes good sides of both systems. So freedom of economy, it says everybody can have an ownership, so private properties are protected, and nobody can make someone deprive someone of their own property unless it is not foreseen in the law. And if anyone being deprived from their properties, they have to be given compensation illegally if they are being taken away illegally. So these are the freedom of economy. It gives you some freedoms, but also on the other hand, it also try to develop and support the communal economy. So, and also fighting against monopoly is important in order to give everyone some equal opportunities. And the role of women and the situation of women has a special state, because when we talk about the communal economy, it's very vital for the vital to let women to participate, let them participate in this economical system. Women's right, the women's rights in terms of political rights, social rights, but also economical rights are also assured in the social contract. So these principles gives equal opportunities to every single citizen of the region. The first one was sustainability, second one was freedom of economy, free economy, and the third one is also social justice. In the capitalist communities where the surplus is the priority, it always creates weak classes and also disadvantaged women. So, and we see eventually right to education, right to health are also being affected. These people, the low classes, are being deprived of these rights. So our economy is based on social justice, and it should bring the social peace in the society, not divided into classes, and also free free of charge, like education, health, and accommodation. They should also be provided. This is also very important, especially for the women, for the elderly, for the mothers. They should be given some privileges in terms of these rights. And another principle is the fair division, dividing the income in a fair way. So income from the natural sources should be divided in a fair way among the people living in the region. So Article 40 of the social contract says the natural sources and treasures should be considered the public property, and the using and benefiting from them should be regulated by the law. And it says the properties and the of the democratic autonomy should be seen as the property of the public, and the way to use and benefit from them should be regulated by the law. The economy that it is based.
Yeah. Chalang.
Okay, I will try to finish it at time. I think I have only 10 minutes left. So the principle.
Yeah, we have, you got another, you can take another 10 minutes.
As I said, this economical system that's being implemented, or they are trying to establish in the autonomous region, it will try to participation of the social groups in the production. It have to ensure it, and at most or most the participation of women. And technology should also be at the service of the production and also of the nature. We have free economy, but as we said, the purpose of this free economy is not reaching the monopoly or taking the control of everything. It's only about satisfying the needs. Before between 2012 and 2014, there was a serious initiatives to establish communes and cooperatives. It was seen as a tool for starting this system. we saw that workers and farmers were started being organized within cooperatives. And we also have communes of economy, the first communes. They were the first ones. And they were the startup cooperatives. As I mentioned earlier, all the fields of the Kurds had been confiscated by the regime. So once the regime left, all these fields which belonged to the state became the property of the cooperatives. And then according to them, we started around like 200 cooperatives for agriculture, and they employed around thousands of people. Employment opportunity was also provided, and the members of the cooperatives, they also benefit from their own production, and all the productions produced in the country was going to the city, and in the city they were being sold. So in order to sell them, there was a different cooperatives for selling the production of the different cooperatives. But also there were some vocational cooperatives in terms of technology, electricity. They also have their own cooperatives. But despite all of it, despite the so much support for the cooperatives, it is a critic, but it's also the reality. The cooperatives didn't play their roles as much as we wanted them. This happened because there's a different reasons. It is also because of the competition with the private initiative, private companies. They were not at the level to compete with the private producers. And there was a weakness in terms of structures, but also mentality, because we were talking about a society that's been dominated by a nation state for for so many years, and then the understanding of economy was much different. So we couldn't change this understanding either. In the recent years, the number of cooperatives are dropping. In Serikaniye, there were so many cooperatives, and today it is occupied in Turkey. But the ones in Serikaniye were really successful. But after the occupation, they were all shut down. When we also see that the economical problems of Syria also affects us, because we are still a part of Syria. Because when the economy goes down in Syria, we are also affected, because we are also still using the currency of the regime. So when they have the devaluation, then it affects us. And on the other hand, we are being surrounded by 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 Turkey, and on the border gates, on the opening to the Kurdistan region in Iraq, it's sometimes being shut down depending on the political agendas, and the south is the regime. So under this occupation, we are surrounded, so the cooperatives couldn't play the roles that we wanted them to. In July, they had a new piece of legislation. It was about the establishment of a new institution, a body. It's called it's dealing with the social projects and the cooperatives. So they will in the new cooperatives, the cooperatives that might be established in future, they will have some different fundaments, they are the different approach, and the social democracy. There will be more in a more scientific basis. And these cooperatives will also be connected to the communes in the neighborhoods and in the villages. And currently the autonomous administration is supporting the cooperatives producing fuel and also bread, and so that they can provide affordable prices for the people. They are much cheaper compared to the private companies or the workshops. So the system is, first we said it is cooperative, second it's the communes, and the third one are the trade unions. They have the trade union of the teachers, farmers, doctors, engineers, and also the shopkeepers. They have their own trade unions. And within those trades unions, for example, of the shopkeepers, they have a umbrella one, but under it, they also have shopkeepers for cloth, shopkeepers for other products. And within the trade union of the farmers, they have around 200,000 members. It's a huge number. And the reason why there's so many people became members, because they are also, through these trade unions, they can get cheaper fuel for their production, for their tractors, for their machineries. So the communes are all effective in terms of the way that the cooperatives will be working, but also trade unions are also representing the interest of the members and can also get in touch with the autonomous administration. But as we said, we are surrounded, the Turkish attacks are going on, and the traditional way of understanding of economy, it doesn't change so easy. These are all the challenges that we face. And currently, we are financing this system mostly with the income from the petrol. We know that it is actually against the nature, it's destroying the nature, but for the time being, that's the only source of income. And this is for the time being, it's the priority to provide the people living in the region with their needs. But as we said, it is not our priority to continue like this. This is a critique. We know it might be also a contradiction. We are trying to make peace with nature, but now very depending on the petrol and fuel. And also we said because of the surrounding, we are surrounded by Turkey, and Turkey is also controlling the water sources, and it's not only about the water, drinking water of the people, but also affects the economy, because when there is no water, the people cannot agriculture becomes impossible. But as we said, our goal is communal economy. It's a revolutionary economy, but this economy will not only be about economy, but it will also affect the social structures and the politics. And for that, we need within this theory framework of this theory that I mentioned, we are trying to establish it. But despite all these difficulties and challenges, but we are working very hard. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we are not. And we are also a part of this revolution in Rojava, which is also it's an ongoing revolution. And we see it as a part of this revolution, because the revolution cannot only be with weapons, but also it has the economical aspects, and we are also trying to fulfill this part. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Chalang. As I listened to your presentation, I'm just reminded of just the immensity and really the heroic nature of what your people, the Kurdish people, and their allies are attempting to do in Rojava. It is an extraordinary undertaking. It is being undertaken in the face of overwhelming opposition and obstruction. It's truly a remarkable effort. In my view, what is taking place in Northeast Syria is really at the vanguard of radical rethinking of not only politics, but of economics. And the principles that you described in terms of social economy and the efforts to establish these principles in Rojava are in fact embedded in so many other places in Europe, in North America, in Asia, where these very same ideas of sustainability, of a complementary relationship between economics and ecology, where the promotion of social justice and social equity are seen as fundamental to revising and reforming how we think about economics. So the point I wanted to highlight in those remarks is the importance of communication and interaction between the work you are doing on the social economy front in Rojava and sharing those efforts and those lessons with other movements and other systems in other parts of not only your region, but with Europe, with North America, with Canada, and so on, to try and establish means of interaction, exchange, communication, and support for the radical economic model you're trying to establish in Rojava. And I would be very, very interested in continuing that conversation going forward as to how that can be promoted. My background professionally has been as an educator and as an organizer and as a writer on the subject of cooperative economics and the social economy for close to 30 years now. And when I visited Rojava, I think it was 2016, I believe, I was so impressed by the progress and the innovation that the movement had been able to achieve almost without any help from outside sources. And it was astonishing to me, the depth and the commitment to social economy and to cooperative principles that I saw at that time. Rojava's experiment and revolution around social economy is one of the very few examples that I know of where there is a conscious attempt to place civil society in control of the economy. Traditionally, there have been two forms in the modern era of relationships between the economy and government or the state. One is where capital controls the economy. It has resulted in neoliberalism as we know it today. And it is a model where the economy is understood as something independent and dislocated from society, and which operates according to its own supposed independent and natural organic principles. And what we have then is an alienation then of the economy from society and social values and social norms. And that is the heart and essence of modern capitalism. On the other hand, the other model that has been attempted is one in which the economy is totally subsumed under the control of the state and centralized authority, and where centralized planning attempts to control all the major facets of the economy in purpose of a political project. And that is, as we know, the model of state planned economies, the Marxist model that has also been catastrophic, not only for the economy and for individual and human freedoms and rights, but also for the environment. The third possibility is one that's really never been attempted, except now, with examples like Rojava, and in a few other cases internationally. The other example that comes to mind is Chiapas in Mexico and the Zapatista revolution taking place there. And this is the model where, in fact, civil society becomes the center of gravity and the center of the focus for how the economy is understood and managed. And it recognizes that society is the foundation of the economy, and that economies and economic models arise out of the interactions and the social connections in any society, and that the economy cannot be independent and autonomous, as you pointed out in your remarks, but that the economy is embedded in society. And this is the concept of civil economy or social economy. Nor can the economy be dependent on the state for planning and centralized control, as in Marxist doctrine. So I was very interested in the point that you made later on in your remarks about how, with the occupation of these regions now by Turkey, or previously by the control of many of these regions by the regime, there was a concerted attempt to destroy cooperatives. And this is the case everywhere where you have authoritarian regimes. One of the first things they try to do is destroy economic autonomy and the ability of local communities to control their own economies. And so cooperatives represent a democratic form of communitarian control over economic activity, either in the cooperative control of natural resources such as water or oil, as you were mentioning, or in the establishment of democratic enterprises for conducting business. Authoritarian regimes always undermine and try to control cooperative systems or bend them to their own purposes, because they are, in fact, in principle, a threat and an opposition to authoritarian and hierarchical control. So when I hear your presentation on the efforts of the autonomous administration to establish a social economy model for North and East Syria, it raises a number of issues for me. And it reminds me of a certain, what I would say are needs or requirements for such a system to really become institutionalized and to be sustainable over the long term. One of the questions that comes to my mind is the need for a deep learning within civil society and the institutional needs to sustain a social or civil economy model over the long term. How does this deep learning and deep restructuring of the attitudes and the habits that people have acquired over decades and decades of centralized authoritarian control, not only of politics and culture, but also of economic systems? So what are the kinds of institutions that we need to reflect on to make this kind of social economy model sustainable and successful over the long term? And so I wanted to share maybe a few thoughts on this, and I would very much like to hear your own reflections on some of these points. The first being the necessity for deepening cooperative learning and cooperative culture. We can't take for granted that ideas like a democratic ownership and control over an enterprise or over a resource will naturally result in a successful model for actually running a successful cooperative enterprise. Very much depends on the kind of attitudes and skills, social skills and skills in cooperative and democratic governance that people have in order to realize these kinds of principles in a cooperative or in some kind of a social economy system that they then are ultimately in control of. So this deepening of cooperative culture and learning, I think, is absolutely crucial. And I would very much like to hear more about how you are addressing this challenge, because it is a very, very deep challenge within the experiences that I've become aware of in Canada and the United States and in Europe. The necessity for cooperative training and the development of cooperative attitudes is always a major issue, cooperative education. Secondly, and then you mentioned this also, that there need to be the legal means for constructing cooperative enterprises and economic structures. So in finance, for example, in infrastructure, in skills training and managerial training for running enterprises and common resources. In the field of energy, for example, and natural resources, what are the kinds of social economy institutions and the supports for those institutions that need to be built to keep them sustainable? The third question that I often think about is how to establish new forms of exchange and value that reflect social markets for the social economy. In other words, if a social economy is dependent on its survival on capitalist markets or on capitalist forms of exchange and production, in other words, built around the generation of profit as being the primary motive, or if a social economy is dependent on the state for grants or for capital in order to run social enterprises, then we really don't have a social economy. I believe what we need to understand is that social economies need their own forms of social value as the basis for economic production and exchange. In other words, social markets that reflect the values and principles of reciprocity, mutuality, cooperation, and especially the generation of social value as the primary purpose of social enterprises and social economy? How do we create social markets that generate and produce and measure and attach value to those kinds of exchanges for social value and for the common good? And then how do we establish the kinds of education, cultural, and training institutions that sustain and renew these economic principles and practices? I have found that it is especially in those places where the academic institutions and the educational institutions like the universities and the colleges have programs that are dedicated to training people in understanding both the theory and the philosophy of cooperative economics and of social economy, and then also provide them with the kinds of skills that enable them to translate these values into practical economic activities in the field and in the community, whether it's organizing cooperative or whether it's understanding how to manage a common resource like water or like petrol or like any other natural resource. So how do we build the educational and training institutions that provide those kinds of both theoretical and practical skills for people so that they can actually undertake the creation of these forms of cooperative and social economy institutions? The other point that I wanted to share was that in my experience, so many of the social enterprises and social economic activities in places where I have worked are on the margins of the economy. In human services, in social care, sometimes in creating jobs for people in certain pockets of the economy, but very rarely does the social economy operate at the foundational core of essential resources in the economy, like energy, like healthcare. Certainly in agriculture, cooperatives have been very active. But the point I'm making is that somehow we have to find a way to move social economy activities, cooperatives, and social enterprise from the margins to the center and the foundation of an economy for them to be sustainable. And then I'll just close on these final reflections. I was very, very interested in your comments concerning the importance of personal freedom and the recognition that personal freedom also is associated with the right of individuals to run personal and private enterprises, that there is a combination and a blending of private enterprise with cooperative and common enterprise in Rojava, and that the two are complementary. They don't have to be antagonistic to each other. And in fact, I would argue that for a healthy economy to be sustainable and to be acceptable to a society, it needs to be pluralistic. It needs to have a wide variety of economic forms that reflect the interests and the skills and the values of the range of people in a community. And that includes private enterprise and private entrepreneurs, and thus the establishment and support of private firms, and not just communal or public firms. So I think that these are extraordinary efforts that are being made in Rojava. I think Rojava and what you've outlined presents a case study in how a community can finally take control over its economy through these practices based on the kinds of political, social, cultural, and ecological values that are embedded in the social contract that guides the efforts of the autonomous administration in Rojava. And I regard the work that is being done by you and your colleagues in Rojava as a kind of lighthouse to guide so many others that are working in this field, and so many lessons to be learned and shared. And then I will close on the appeal that somehow we find a way to connect formally the institutions for social economy and the cooperative organizations that are working so hard in Rojava with other cooperative institutions and cooperative organizations internationally, to recognize the value of what you are doing, to learn from what you are doing, and also to provide their own share of lessons and experience from their own decades and decades of experience of cooperative systems outside of Rojava. So I will leave it at that, and hopefully others can add to my own questions and comments. I have some questions on the chat, but if you want to begin by answering a couple of the questions that I raised, and then I'll return to the questions that have been posted on the chat.
Thank you very much, John. There are the topics that you raised as very important topics. They're also the ones that some challenges that we face, because this theory that we want to implement it here, these are the daily problems that we face. And the last thing that you said, it's about education, training, how we can train or educate the people, the society, workers, how we can teach the society the cooperative culture, because people are coming from a culture of decades of repression. So, and as an information, we have 3 pillars in social economy. One, cooperatives; second, commons; and the third ones are the trade unions. In addition to them, we have academies. These academies of social economy, they couldn't play their role as much as we wanted them to. So the established cooperatives, they failed. Okay, we have some examples that they became very successful, but the others didn't, because eventually they fall in the traditional way of running places, and also some corruption was a problem. So their commitment was not very sincere. They wanted to have the same benefit as if it was a private company, but it wasn't the purpose. It's not the purpose of a cooperative, which shows that we failed in terms of teaching the essence of cooperatives to the people. So it also closely related to the mentality of the society. Since 2015, we have some courses, special courses at schools. These courses are about social economy and also protection of nature. So from the primary school until university, it has to be a subject that taught at schools. And those institutions working in this field, they have to focus on training. So we need also experts. We have to train our experts, and also these experts can reach out to society, the people, and then teach them. But in that sense, we have some shortcomings. It is a problem to have these experts that educate the society. And as we said, public property. Public property is important, but we recognize. But it's not, as you said, by naming it public property doesn't provide successful. We need how to organize them, how to use it. But as we said, we are providing these people with affordable prices, for example, in fuel, and it is good or important for people, but it also destroyed the nature. So, but as we that's something that we have to sort it out. But on the other hand, the the salaries that we pay in autonomous region are much higher than the salaries paid by the regime, and it comes from the revenue of petrol. So we have to find a solution, and the natural sources, resources, as we said, it also bread. The bread is one of the bases of the nutrition in the region. Maybe in some countries it can be rice, it can be something else, but in our region, the most important nutrition is bread. It is important to continue this production because the production is also being bought by the autonomous administration, and they probably spend like 40% of their budget for wheat. And then it will be sold to the bakeries for with affordable prices. So this is also supporting the communes, and so it's in favor of the people. So, and also those trade unions that they need affordable fuel for the production. It's kind of supporting each other, some revenue and from the needs, but it shouldn't be done. And the autonomous administration it's a government. So the involvement of the government shouldn't be that visible or that remarkable in this economy. That should be the role should be played by the cooperatives, by the trade unions, and the communes. They should do it, but we are not at level yet. Yeah. Then now we need to, so the society, the people should actually be in charge without involvement of the government. We have financial problems, and they are very serious problems. How they can finance themselves? The region is surrounded, but also the people lack of some. They're not brave enough. They have some concerns. They have some. They Most of the people, they say we don't want to take the lead and start an establishment because people are also concerned about these regions being occupied by Turkey. Same thing happened in Afrin and other places. In Afrin, in Serekaniye, we had this textile workshop with 1,300 workers. After the region was occupied and all the machinery all destroyed. So people think that same thing might happen in other regions, so they don't want to invest so much. So political and military conditions can be determinative in they can determine also the economy. And also as a result of the war and conflicts, we didn't have any electricity. A couple of villages, the villagers they came together, they found a generator, and they produced their own. But once they think that there will be war again and it will be continuing, they are discouraged. So we need more courage to start these things. But as we said, these are not the conditions that we can control. As a person, if you ask me, actually, at the time of war, there should be more initiatives like this rather than not being discouraged. Because that's the only way to survive. Because if we have strong cooperatives, it will be also protect people, because we have military working, fighting at the front, but we also need a very strong, courageous, organized society to produce and be self-sufficient. And if you don't do it, we have to buy it from outside, then we have to give our sources for outside. So the cooperative should play a more significant role. And cooperatives are not only about agriculture, but we also need the vocational cooperatives. We have 1 million tons of wheat every year. We produce it, but the pasta, the macaroni, we buy it from outside, although we produce the wheat. So we had these kind of workshops. We produce cotton, but now we have to buy the cloth from outside. So that these are all because of the war conditions. So we need alternatives. If the war between Russia and Ukraine affects us in Rojava, this is our failure. We have to be self-sufficient. Therefore, we need more work, more education, and as he said, the leading role shouldn't be the autonomous administration in this model of economy, but it should be the cooperatives themselves. And the private sector, we see that their priority is also benefit. But now we also have to train and educate and convince them that the priority is the providing need of the people, not the benefit. And the autonomous administration shouldn't be involving with every part of the economy. It should be either cooperatives and the private initiatives. They also want to make more benefit because of the war. And we don't have a internal market in the region of autonomous administration, because we are also dependent on the currency of the regime. When the currency is losing its worth, it also pressurizes us in the internal market in Rojava. I think these are the ones. I hope I could answer your questions.
Yes, so I appreciate your thoughts, and you've highlighted a fundamental paradox that, on the one hand, cooperatives are a survival strategy in times of crisis, in times of war, in times of economic crisis. Very often it is cooperatives that are organized to sustain a society and to provide services, essential goods and services to people. And so the crisis has generated a need for cooperatives, and they have been formed. On the other hand, the crisis also imposes a limit on how successful the cooperatives can be because of the war, because of all these economic pressures that you're outlining. Because of the antagonism of the regime and of Turkey on cooperatives. So there is this paradox going on, that the crisis both produces opportunity for cooperatives to be established and also imposes restrictions and limits and threats to those very cooperatives. It's a paradox. It's just a very difficult situation to be in. I have a couple of questions I want to share with you before we sign off. One question is, how does the administration prevent monopoly and inequality? To an extent, they are protected by the economic system that discourages people from attempting to develop big businesses. But if the economy got better, this could be more of a problem. So how does the administration prevent monopoly and inequality, especially if the situation improves and businesses become more able to produce and develop, their businesses in the future?
It's a dialectic. It's actually a paradox. How can you improve the cooperatives and the society and also prevent monopoly? As you said, a piece of legislation was passed. It is supporting the fair competition among the producers, but also prohibiting the monopoly, because there are people, private initiatives, that they are connected with the regime, they have connected with the South Kurdistan. So we need the competition. But if you cannot have the fair competition, then it will eventually destroy your local economy, because they might bring the production or the products from outside for much less prices, and it's not a fair competition. So, but it is also a reality, because we cannot produce enough, then we are dependent on the private sector. If you need cement, if you need sugar, then it has to come from outside. But some people want to take advantage of this and want to have the monopoly and they make big benefit. But as we said, it's a paradox that you want to provide the society with its needs and also protect the nature, but you are also dependent on the others. So I agree with you. The solution is the cooperatives. To reduce the monopoly, you need more cooperatives, because once the cooperative system is strong enough and then the production is enough, then it will automatically also prevent the monopoly. But as long as we are dependent on them, there is a risk. So,
okay. Another series of questions. Could you tell us about the land system and currency system in Rojava? Also, how can you educate the young generation to identify with ecological agriculture and cooperative economy? And then finally, do you have the problems of climate crisis and collapse in Rojava? If yes, how can you deal with those climate challenges?
in terms of money, as we said, we are using the currency of Syrian central bank, that we are using it for the exchange. In addition to that, we are also using US dollars. So the money, the monetary system, both the currency we use is the Syrian lira or the dollar, US dollars. But if they are big amounts, then we have to pay with dollars, because Syrian currency is very weak. So, and we don't have a local or a special system or the currency in the region. So we also think if we have our local currency, then we can protect ourselves with the waves in terms of Syrian lira or the domination of the US dollars. So it is a discussion about having local currency. And on the other hand, of the land system, private ownership is protected. It cannot be confiscated. It cannot be taken away from anyone. There are laws, but as I said, there were some public land owned, which used to be public property, belonged to the state in the past, Now they are defined as the property of public, of peoples, and they are controlled by the autonomous administration. And most of them we cannot actually use or benefit because of the war. But in the Kurdish habitat regions, maybe we can say there are more commitment with the social economy, but in Manbij, in other Arab regions, and there are also some religious groups, can also some traditional ways, some tribal structures, they are more resistant against the social economy, and not only social economy, it's also about the participation of women in everyday life. Or when we talk about nature, it's not their priority. When we talk about women being part of the administration, politics, they are reluctant. So it's important for us to actually bring cooperative for women in those regions so that they can have their economic independence. So how we can change the mentality, and you cannot change the mentalities just with the academies or with schools or classes or seminars. So educating the people from that society, for example, women from those societies, becoming independent, learning and being part of these workshops and the cooperatives can also influence their family and their surrounding. Another question was about climate change. Yes, we feel it. It affects us. Just to keep it short, of course, we have the war going on, and then every day bombs are exploding in Manbij, in around Kobani. Most of the Kobani was, it also affected our nature. Not only this houses, but also the nature was destroyed, and also water of Euphrates is decreasing. In addition to that, they are being cut by the Turkish state, and some smaller ones all dried out. In Kamışlo, for example, Yakjak River, it's like a sewage system now because the water is drying and then it's being cut by the Turkey. It's no longer a river, but it's like a sewage system. And also Khabur River on the Turkish border, it's also cut by Turkey. So, and Turkey has this policy of building dams in order to control the water, and now they are using the as a weapon against Turkey. The Turkish Southeast Project, it's called GAP. It was the project for controlling water, and now. And another problem that we have is about the pollution. It's about the petrol, but we don't have any developed or good technology of refinery. What we do is very primitive, and it also brings carbon monoxide in the air, and also and then all these problems also affect our nature. That's what we need to find solutions. So we need technology. We need better technology to produce better benzene, better fuel. Of course, for the time being, we cannot maybe give up on petrol. We need it, maybe, but we also need to produce maybe solar energy. But we cannot bring any technology from outside. We are under an embargo. So what we need is effective technology, and also it will provide technologies, the cooperatives with a better structure, then we can be more effective and more environment friendly.
In fact, that was going to be the next question I asked you, because someone had posed this question, whether there was a plan to transition from petrol production and the harm it does on the environment to other forms of more sustainable energy production, like solar that you mentioned. But I think you answered that question, that it's very difficult, that even though there's damage to the environment and it's a dirty process, there are restrictions on what you can do in the time being. Thank you for that response. And then finally, I'm going to pose a final question, which is, do you have some statistics about the percentage of the cooperatives and communes economically and socially within North and East Syria?
درباره کوپراتیفین جواکی و کوپراتیفین آبورین لباکوری روشت سوری دسته بده آمار هجمار هی گوش سدی چند آبورینش سدی چند ویندنن
کوپاراتیو وک پروژه این آبوری تایبت هجمار وان کم بویا یعنی بلکه
The number, as I said, the number dropped until 2016. We had around 200 cooperatives, but today I think the number is by half, is around 100. And the communes, it is not only for economy. The communes are the structure that controlling every town, every village, and every neighborhood. And these communes, they also have a committee for economy, and they are related with the cooperatives. And these the committees are also in charge of organizing the cooperatives to provide the peoples in the neighborhood with affordable prices, with affordable bread, for example. So communes are in every single settlement they are having. And then we have 16 trade unions, and some of them are also umbrella, so they had also different subdivisions of teachers, workers, and these trade unions, and they are not only about trading at representing their members, but they are also active in the economy. And because it's not only about them, but it's also providing the farmers with affordable prices for fuel, or also the seeds, or for the teachers, other materials. As I said, due to obvious reasons, war and everything, but they are not very effective. And that you mentioned about using alternative energy, now we can see some individual initiatives, some families, they have these solar panels at the top of the house, and instead of generators, they are now using this, because generators function with diesel. Last year, there was a decision that they limited the automobiles, cars from outside of the region. They limited the numbers, because those cars, they function with the fuel, and they said this is producing pollution. So these are the alternatives, but as I said, it's not at the level that we want them to be.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. It is exactly 7:01, or rather the 2 hours that we had allocated for our lecture today. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share your experience and to provide us an overview of this really foundational and fundamental aspect of the revolution in Rojava. So thank you so much. I appreciate your taking the time to join us today. I don't know, Jade, are you here with us? Would you like to say a few words before we close down the presentation?
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I think we also shares your vision and also the concerns about the alternatives, because we are involved in the rural reconstruction movement in China, and we also provide many training programs for the young generation to identify the with the ecological agriculture and also the cooperative economies. And at the same time, we also have the problems of the climate crisis, and or maybe not crisis already, the climate collapse, because we have the floodings 2 years ago in Zhengzhou in Henan province, and also now in Hong Kong. So now I think we have to, it's quite urgent to think about the alternatives. How can we survive in this kind of declining the survival environment? So thank you very much. And in 2 weeks, we will have the last lectures. So I think that we can have an overview. How can we to learn from each other? How can we have strengthen the communities, have the resilience, the capacity of resilience, and also the capacity to survive? So thank you very much, and see you in 2 weeks.
Right. And again, thanks for me. And I would just want to reiterate my own interest and support for extending and establishing further connections between the cooperative movements in North America and Europe, and what you are doing in Rojava. And if there's any way I can provide any help in providing that support, I would be more than willing to do so. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Hopefully we will see you again in 2 weeks. Have a good time this evening or this afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time. Good day.